cold morning today. Got a special delivery. The man himself, Mr. Garen Becker. What are you doing in there? You moving? Just moving some highly secret bikes is all. Solid. Look at that thing, huh?
The latest, greatest. You want to run down on this thing right now?
Nope.
Okay.
Looking to add mileage and all-around capability, Santa Cruz is back, hitting harder with the new Heckler than ever. So it's been a few years since Santa Cruz first released the Heckler. We were lucky enough to go down to Downeyville, California for the launch of that bike, and it was fun, it was playful, snappy, but there were definitely some people out there that wanted more. It only had 27.5-inch wheels, it had a small battery capacity, and some just felt that it was a little bit limited in where they wanted and thought the e-bike space should be. Garen, before we get into the video real deep and go shred some trails, tell us what's new about this thing.
New Heckler, new frame, new geo, tweaked suspension, bigger battery, more shock compatibility. Yeah, it's just a bigger, better replacement for what was the Heckler.
Obviously, it's a mullet, right?
Yep.
So that was something that I know a lot of people asked about in our first generation review of this bike. The battery obviously was another thing. So
yep.
It sounds like you've addressed a lot of those things that people were looking to see addressed.
Yeah, man, it's funny. Like that was our first e-bike. We launched that thing. We learned that, especially in Europe, people look at three things: wheel size, battery size, torque numbers. We were a little bit off the back with the last Heckler. It had the biggest battery Shimano offered then was a 504. We had that on there. We had the E8000, which was on its way out. Now we have the EP8. And we had two 27.5-inch wheels because the Heckler is the E version of the Bronson. And that Bronson then was a 27.5 bike. So now it's got big wheel up front, mixed wheel options, or 29-inch options in the back. So it's a new swing arm if you want the 29-inch wheel, and a different swing arm for MX.
And adjustable geo?
Adjustable geo with a flip chip in the bottom. That's a new addition. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
And 720 battery, which,
and a big old 720 battery. Yeah.
Something that's worth noting with this new Heckler is the swing arm and the links are different. They are not interchangeable, so you can't necessarily buy a 29-inch Heckler and just swap the wheels out. They are intended to be purchased as separate bikes, so that's something worth noting, and is definitely an interesting approach, and it lets people focus on play, fun, and tight, snappy handling, or speed and all-around rollover capabilities and more exploring type missions that you can get into with this 720 watt-hour battery-equipped bike. So along with putting in a removable 720 watt-hour battery, the new Heckler has Shimano's EP8 drive unit, very easily accessible power button down here at the bottom. There's a charge port that's down here at the bottom as well. Also in this area, you may notice a much larger opening for that rear shock, something that we had some criticisms about with the previous Heckler, and sounds like other riders did as well, was a little bit of a harsh, rough feeling rear suspension, something that was addressed later on when the Bullet came out. Santa Cruz has made those adjustments to the new Heckler. It will fit a coil shock now, larger sized air shocks like the Fox X2, and just generally gives you more space in there to run a wider variety of shocks. The flip chip is down here in that lower link area and quickly allows you to modify the geometry as well as that leverage curve if you desire. We haven't played too much yet with that adjustable geo yet. We have a lot of rocks that you guys have probably noticed in our area here, so dropping bottom brackets is not something that we're always excited about doing. As it is, we've been hitting the cranks a little bit on this thing, and we probably will be shortening those cranks up as we keep this bike and start riding it more. You've got the ability to get a C or CC model. There are 5 build specs available in the new Heckler, and price points vary from $81.99 to $13,299. Now, since Santa Cruz is selling the bikes as a mullet or 29-inch wheel, the geometry is the same across the board, which is really nice. The one exception being the size small. Santa Cruz had an option to either give size small frames a smaller battery and a 29-inch front wheel, or give them 27.5-inch wheels front and rear with a longer battery. And I think that was probably a smart call on Santa Cruz's part. You know, 720 is a good battery size, and it allowed them to maintain frame geometry and dimensions for small sized riders. All right, so let's get into the Geo. Again, small through double extra large frames. We opted for the size large, which has a 475 millimeter reach, 629 millimeter stack height. We've got a 64.8 degree head tube angle in high with a 64.5 degree head tube angle in low. Seat tube angle sits at 76.7 degrees with a 445 millimeter chainstay length, as I said earlier. And we've got a 346 millimeter bottom bracket height in the high position and 342 millimeters in low. So far in our limited riding, while making this video and preliminary tests, we've had a few pedal and crank strikes, so we might opt for a little bit shorter crank arm than these 165s. We might be able to take advantage of that adjustable Geo and drop it into that low position, get a little more progression at the end of that travel, and see how that rides. But overall, so far, definitely an improvement, and quite happy with the bike as a whole. Talking with Santa Cruz, as you saw, Garen came out, dropped this bike off for us. We got out to go for a ride together, talked with some of the engineering team behind this bike. We really wanted to know what Santa Cruz was looking to improve or change from that predecessor. Wheel size, battery range, offerings for the consumer. Obviously, we're up there. The goal of this bike was to not necessarily make the gnarliest big mountain all mountain shredder. They've got the bullet for that. What they wanted to do with increasing the wheel size, increasing the battery size, was get an all-around versatile e-bike that can shred and have a whole lot of fun going down, but can get you into some backcountry exploration missions. You can have fun. It's a little bit more comfortable in the saddle as you're putting in long days pedaling and going over bumpy and rough terrain. And you know, by modifying that tune on the shock, changing that suspension kinematic a bit, having a 36 fork, which drops the weight, keeps this bike well under 50 pounds. I'd say it's solidly in the 49 pound range. Gives a little bit more compliance and a little bit nicer feel all around. Santa Cruz, I think, has done a really good job in creating something that I think a lot of riders who aren't necessarily looking for a self-shuttle downhill e-bike are gonna enjoy. So initial ride impressions, as I kind of hinted at, are very good so far. It is a definite improvement over the last generation Heckler. I'm still gonna be playing around with the suspension a little bit. There have been a couple of long extended downhills where I've noticed a little bit of hand and foot fatigue just because of that VPP roughness that I kind of talk about often. It rides lighter than the last bike. It's way easier to float and get off the ground. Even with that larger battery, this bike feels lighter than the last one. It just effortlessly pops. You can pre-jump, you know, send natural gaps. The progression is super nice. I can't think of having a harsh bottom out on this thing yet. It's really an impressive bike in a lot of ways, and while there are still some areas we're gonna work on testing and trying to work on the suspension tune a little bit better to suit our riding style, I think that there's gonna be a lot of riders that are stoked on this thing right out of the gate. We do look forward to putting a lot more miles on this thing. As you can see, it still looks pretty dang new. We're gonna swap some tires and put some real meats on there, which will probably add a little bit of weight, but we can ditch all these plugs that are filling these holes we put in so far out here in the rocks. Yeah!
Yeah, buddy. Thanks, man. It's fun here.
That was awesome. Well, thanks again for swinging by and dropping this bike off.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have fun on it. Catch you next time. Smash that like button. Is there something else in there?
Yeah, tell them to subscribe.
And a little button in the bottom corner that says subscribe. Want to hit that one too.
Do that. Listen to Garen. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. So
I'm a big YouTuber.
There you go. All right, influencer step 1 checked. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you out on the trails. Perfect.